Forecasters are keeping their eyes on the tropics as two systems are continuing to move along the Atlantic. One of those systems may bring some impacts here to the Lowcountry. Charleston Weber's Jared Smith tells me more for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Jared Smith with Charleston Weber. Welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. Good to be here.
Well, I'm happy to have you back because, needless to say, as you know, forecasters are keeping a close eye on the tropics as two systems continue to move across the Atlantic and any possible impacts to the southeastern United States coast. Humberto was upgraded to a low-end Category 1 hurricane early Friday morning with a maximum sustained winds of 75 miles per hour. The storm was located roughly 465 miles northeast of the northern Leeward Islands as of the National Hurricane Center's 5 a.m. update. And right behind that, of course, is Imelda, which might bring some potential tropical impacts here to the Lowcountry and beyond. Where do we stand right now?
So, a couple things. Humberto has rapidly intensified this afternoon and is now a major hurricane. It's now I can get you that, but Humberto has been intensifying very rapidly. It carved out an eye and really started to take on that classic buzzsaw hurricane look a little bit ago, and so Humberto is now a Category 3 with a maximum sustained wind of 115 miles an hour, and it's moving west-northwest at 5 miles an hour, and it's north of the Lesser Antilles, and is not likely to be a major player for really any land masses. Bermuda subject to change, but the good news is that Humberto is going to be stronger, and we are not going to deal with Humberto. But the second storm, which will probably become Imelda before too long, it was called Disturbance Invest AL94. They have a lot of different names for these things. Well, while they're being, investigated. Invest is short for investigative area, by the Hurricane Center. But is now, as of this evening, has been classified as potential tropical cyclone 9. And what this means is that the storm hasn't formed yet, but there is good enough confidence that one will form to the point where they can start issuing watches and warnings. So there are tropical storm warnings and watches that will be going up in the Bahamas, for example, and that's where they're going to start. But when I show you the track, you'll see why we have been concerned. And the nice thing about this too is that we're now going to get Hurricane Center tracks every 6 hours. So we will get official information from the Hurricane Center, as opposed to a lot of model. There's a lot of model speculation. So We're not going to be doing that. But as you can see here on the track, future Imelda, or currently potential tropical cyclone 9, will be moving northwest, pretty much over the Bahamas as a tropical storm. Gets out over the Gulf Stream and briefly strengthens to a hurricane. And then you'll notice that right now the track has it stalling out just shy of the coast, and this is on 2 p.m. Wednesday. And again, I think the thing to keep in mind here is that this is the opening bid, so to speak. This is the first track. It is still really, really uncertain. Humberto will have a lot to say on the subject, potentially. If Humberto gets stronger than forecast and gets closer, it could potentially take Imelda before it makes landfall and slingshot it away.
God willing.
Yeah. But what the most likely setup right now is depicted by the Hurricane Center forecast, and where it stalls out somewhere near our coast, and the potential for heavy rain is certainly increasing. Now, we'll see how this shakes out. Again, we don't really have a coherent circulation center yet. I think that's one thing that that we have to keep in mind, is that we don't have a coherent circulation center yet. It's still getting together. There's a lot of questions over how much land interaction it's going to have as it moves in northeast. That could certainly have an impact on the strength of the storm.
Cool.
If it's closer to Humberto, we talked about the potential for it to get move, but that could also shear the storm off a little bit, which is kind of priced into this forecast. I mean, again, typically with the way these, when you have two tropical cyclones in proximity to each other, there's usually a stronger one and a weaker one. It's just the way these things work. And the stronger one is going to shear off the weaker one. And that, I think that's playing into how that forecast looks. So yes, we do have something that we need to be paying very close attention to. And again, sounding the alarm a little early, because yes, it's not developed yet, but it will develop and could develop fairly quickly over the weekend as it moves in. So we want folks to be starting to get ready now.
Sure, absolutely. And I want to get back to that in just a second, but I know we're coming up here in 3 minutes on the 5 o'clock at 5, if I'm not mistaken. Does this particular latest update help narrow down any possible routes for this?
I mean, that's what that's the nice thing about having the track there, is that it gives you now insights into what the Hurricane Center forecasters have in mind. But again, I have to stress that there's a lot of uncertainty here. Yes. Especially when you're dealing with, we're dealing with a setup where there's an upper low that's actually driving a front, as we're recording this, is starting to drive a front into the Lowcountry. And it's actually going to be wet at times this weekend. And that's not great, because we're going to have more rain on top of that. It'd be better if we were just dry. It's kind of a complex thing, because if it's too dry, then you get a bunch of runoff. If it's too wet, then you get a bunch of runoff. So you kind of want it just right. So hopefully we kind of prime everything just right. But yes. The main concern that I've got with this is that that upper low could tug Imelda or future Imelda back into the coast, and that's been the dominant solution on the models now for the better part of a couple days. But there's still models that have Humberto slingshotted out. There's some models that Humberto's influence only stalls it, and that's not good. That's not good either. We don't want that, and it stalls it out over an area over if the center comes in McClellanville-ish, as they're wont to do, that's not great for places like Myrtle Beach. That's not great for Wilmington. That's not great for the, really all of eastern North Carolina. And then also you have to worry about if, as that low makes inroads inland, there's a possibility that it could spread that heavy rain further inland. And if, as you might recall from this time last year,
right,
there are some weary people in western North Carolina who would rather not see this.
Right.
So that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. But the thing that I have to emphasize to Quintin is that these cones can change. And we've seen it. We've lived it. We've been on this show talking about it
so many times
over the years, and so there's going to be a lot of fine tuning of this forecast in the next few days. So what we need folks to do is get ready. Make sure that you have your preparedness kit ready to go. Make sure I don't know if it'll come to this, but in the event that, it becomes a situation where you need to potentially evacuate, it's not off the table. We need folks to know where their evacuation zone is.
Right.
So hurricane.sc on the SCEMD website, they have a Know Your Zone page. It shows you a map. Put in your location, it'll tell you what your evacuation zone is. It's really great. I actually took a look at it last night, because the zones do change from time to time. And so I took a look at mine last night. And just, make sure that you've got supplies and make sure you got everything. I actually was helping my mom this morning, got her, we got the car gassed up. We got some cash out, we got some groceries coming in, filling up some gas cans, things like that. Again, I don't think it's going to come to that, but you would rather be over-prepared than caught with your pants down. And so we want everybody to, buckle up the britches, so to speak. So Imelda, which will very likely be Imelda. I try not to pre-name things, but I think, given the situation, it's a pretty good chance that it'll get the name Imelda. Where this storm will not, you don't want to be caught off guard in case it does come in stronger. And the advice that the Weather Service has been giving, to kind of in the opening thing is strong tropical storm and hurricane conditions are possible.
Can this be a tropical storm with those hurricane conditions?
Well, yeah, again, the hurricane force, it's a pretty solid definition. So you have, tropical storm is 39 to 73 mile an hour maximum sustained winds, and then you get with a hurricane you get 74 and up, and typically you'll find those, and again, you'll typically find those stronger winds closer to the center. Not everybody sees the hurricane stuff. A lot of people say, a lot of people will get a brush by from, they'll get a brush by like on the southern side of a Category 3, and it's like, oh, well, I went through a Category 3 here, and it's like, actually, no, you didn't.
Right.
And so it's not equal everywhere. The closer you are to the center, the more pronounced the impacts will be. So, I mean, it's very possible that, we could see some hurricane force gusts, maybe. I mean, it's really, it's tough to know.
Yeah.
Given this track, I think we have to consider it.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. This might be another complicated question, but can this storm just bring us tropical rain without the storm?
It's not looking that way. It's not looking that way. I think we're going to the configuration of it and the way that it's going to work out. And again, there's a lot of things at play here. There's a front that's going to be stalling offshore. There's going to be some interaction with that possibly that could, that'll certainly weaken it. Getting into the end of September, beginning of October. And we've actually had some cooler than normal days. We've had a pretty good cooler than normal stretch until recently, and so that's helped bring the sea surface temperatures down a little bit over the shelf. But again, the Gulf Stream is what it is, and so so we are, I think we should be, ready for whatever this ends up bringing, and it looks very much like it's going to be a lot of rain.
A lot of rain. What are the similarities with this storm versus the past storms?
Right now this it reminds me of like a kind of a Dorian light a little bit, and the reason I say that is that kind of the genesis and slow move over the Bahamas, and then potentially stalling out, and because Dorian never actually made landfall here, as you'll recall. So it did the and but that was a pretty good lashing. That was a pretty good hit.
Yeah.
And so no two storms are alike. I think that's the most important thing, is that, you got through one storm fine, but it doesn't mean that the next one is going to go as well. And so, it's not something that, we want folks to be, thinking about. Is it going to become a Category 5 over the Bahamas like Dorian did? No.
No.
That is extraordinarily unlikely. If it did, we've got bigger problems. But that's extraordinarily unlikely. There's no model that is suggesting that it really gets past too much higher than Cat 1 right now, if that. So the preponderance of the evidence that we have today, as of this recording, is that the most likely outcome is for a, we don't like to say the word minimal hurricane, because hurricanes bad enough, right? So a hurricane's a hurricane. It's going to cause a lot of problems. It may not be, the tightly wound, major hurricane or anything like that, but a hurricane can do damage. Tropical storm can do damage.
Right.
So, so again, I think the most important thing is that we should hope for the best, but we should get ready in case this turns out worse. And that's the cost of living here, unfortunately.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. What is the current water temperature?
So the water temperatures right now. Let me actually get you the latest. Let me get you the latest temperature in the harbor here. Make sure I get this from a reputable place. They don't always. Google is unfortunate in that they really don't float a lot of good stuff up anymore. But I mean, the harbor water temperature was still upper 70s. Ooh. So it's still warm. Yeah. It's still plenty warm. It might not be that 80-degree threshold that we like to see for tropical cyclone maintenance. Might be slightly, but I wouldn't. The only thing that would potentially really overturn the surface temperature there, the sea surface temperature there, is if it does stall out and we get upwelling of the cooler water from underneath the surface, and then that can have an effect on a tropical cyclone if it's stalled out. But again, Gulf Stream is still 80, 85, easy.
Easy. And how long?
So
Yeah. And how long will it be over this particular potential storm be over warm water before it actually makes a landfall somewhere?
I mean, it could be over warm water for a few days, but warm water does not always translate to strong storm. I think the other thing that we have to keep in mind, it's an important ingredient, but it's not the only ingredient. Wind shear,
Yes.
and again with Humberto relatively close by, the outflow from Humberto can actually act to shear off the storm a little bit. There'll be low pressure moving in that could play a factor in maybe making the storm a little bit lopsided. So there's a lot of different factors that are going to come into play here over the next few days, and we just have to watch it. But that's just how it'll go. Sure. And we hope that the intensity forecasts hold. I have to caveat that intensity forecasts are extraordinarily difficult, and this is an extraordinarily difficult forecast. So we need folks to be, kind of open-minded to the potential that this could turn out to be stronger than the initial forecast will show. So we need people to be keeping up to date with those updates.
Oh, absolutely. They can always follow you on X, CHSWX. You're on Instagram, CHSWX, and of course, Facebook, Charleston Weber. And
we're doing Blue Sky now at chswx.com, and you can also get Mastodon, CHSWX at chswx.social. So everywhere.
Yes, absolutely.
Or just visit chswx.com. I put everything on the homepage now, and it fans out.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's absolutely right. I know you got to run because the 5 o'clock advisory just came down, so I'll let you go. But Jared Smith with Charleston Weber, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. We got to meet differently, but we'll do that one day.
Absolutely.